Begin the current Daf Eruvin Daf. Hey, begin on the bottom of the Dalma base. Go a few lines back from what we said the previous Daf. 6 lines up at the bottom of the Amid. Rashia's corresponds to the Kabbalah in Cheskel or anytime Daf Achayim. Some things we're going to speak about in today's Daf are regarding if what happens if, let's say, the Kaira, which we opened up this parak, this Masech, by saying it can't be above 20 amas. So let's say you just can't lower the beam, and this actually happens in common day Eruvin. We're using utility poles and certain things. You can't lower that kaira. So what you want to do is you want to elevate the ground. So the question we're going to discuss is how much in the depth of the mavli do you have to elevate the ground. Additionally, what happens if it's exactly the opposite? What happens if there's a minimum height of the kaira? The kaira has to be at least 10 tefachim from the ground. What happens if the ground is actually less than 10 tefachim? So you have to actually excavate, you have to actually dig into the ground. How much into the length of the mavli do you have to go ahead and dig that space in? Another concept we've been discussing in today's daf is a lechi is a thin side post in the mavli. What happens if it sticks out a lot? It's almost like a wall. Would that function as a lechi? And if it doesn't, what's going to be the halachic status of that mavli? So the key terms and concepts we've been discussing in today's daf, which people had mentioned in the previous daf, how does a kaira function? What does it actually do? Is it misham hekera? Is it just like, okay, it's a sign, I realize this is where the Eruv, this is where this mavli stops? Or is it misham mechitza? Do we view it as a virtual wall that this is like as if it's coming down? The concept of oimen merubal parts, which is if you have a closed area, not every time does every part of that wall closed, but let's say the majority of it is closed and a minority is parts is breached, what the halachic status of that is, and the concept of what's known as subject devrein lahaka. When you have a doubt regarding rabbinic law, then we go lengthy. So we begin the current daf. The halacha is hayigavoy mesmam. Again, we're at the bottom of Dalma base, 6 lines out of the bottom of the Amid, where we said these lines from the previous daf. Hayigavoy mesmam. What's if the kaira was above 20 ams? Okay, so Volamaita, you're coming to lower it again. The way you're coming to lower it is by you're making a platform beneath it, or you're putting some earth beneath the beam to lower this space between the ground and the kaira and the crossbeam. So kama might. So how much of that do you have to diminish? Which sounds like how much should you elevate the ground? So the Gemara wonders, kama might, how much should you lower it? Kama detzarchle, however much you need until the airspace is not going to be 20 amas. And the rather says the Gemara. No, my question was rechavai, the width of the diminishment of that platform to lower the airspace into the length of the mavoi. That's my question, Bekama. How much in the length of that do you need to go ahead and do? Oh, so that's a machlekes. Rabbi Yisrael Matafach, he says that it's right beneath the kaira. The kaira itself has to be a tafach. Rabbi Yisrael says, look at this picture. You see that all you have to do is make that space right beneath the kaira, make that a tafach, and now you have less than 20 amas over there. But more than that, you don't have to. Abayomi says, no, he says it has to be 4 tfachim into the space of the mavoi. That has to be an elevated platform of whatever whatever you have to diminish from the airspace of 20 ams. Says the Gemara. Now the Gemara is going to introduce 4 different approaches to explain this machlekes Abayi and Rabbi Yosef. Why is it has to be a tefach or 4 tefachim? Let's say they're disagreeing about the following principle. The Ma'anda Amar Tefach, according to Rabbi Yosef, that says that it only has to be a tefach. Kesaber, he holds mutulish tamish tachs kaira. You're allowed to utilize the area from the mavoi right beneath the crossbeam. The reason for this is, the way Rashi explains it, is because what's called chudei achitzin, the outermost part of the crossbeam, is yorid v'seisim. We view it as if it's coming down and closing off, as the Gemara sounds like later on of chesem base. So therefore, since the measurement of 20 amas is because of a hecker, just as a sign, so the people that are right beneath the crossbeam, which they're part of the permitted area of the mavoi, they're going to see, because once they step onto this platform, they're going to see, oh, now it's within their field of vision because it's within 20 amas. So since it functions as a hecker, and they're going to see it because they're allowed to utilize the area beneath it. So therefore, that's going to function. It's going to accomplish the goal that we want. That they're going to be able to see it. But as we continue top of Hayim and Aleph, but Amam Damar Baksa Barbaya, who holds has to be 4 tefachim, he holds Asla Shamash Tachas Hakari. You're not going to utilize the area beneath the crossbeam itself, because he holds, the way Rashi translates, is that the inner part of the crossbeam, that is what comes down and closes off as a virtual wall. So therefore, it comes out that the width of the crossbeam itself is out of the area of the mavoi that you're allowed to use. Now, so for those who are using the space of the mavoi that they want to be able to carry in that area, they don't have any sign by the kaira because they're too low down. They're not, again, if it wasn't for, let's say it was only a tefach, like Rabbi Yosef says, Abayi disagrees. He says, you can't use this area beneath the crossbeam. So what's going to help if it's a tefach? This is not part of the mavli. This in the inner part is part of the mavli, and they don't see it because for them it's above 20 amas. So therefore, they have to. What you have to do is you have to extend this platform into the mavli so that the people in the mavli could see it. Now, as Rashi explains, once it can't be just a tefach because the tefach is not enough, because that's right beneath the kaira, and again, you can't utilize the area beneath the kaira because it's the inner part that actually comes down and closes off the bridge wall. So then already, this is a concept we find in the Gemara many times. Once we're not doing it the tefach, we do the next available number, which is something a little bit more significant, which is going to be 4 tefachim. We don't say, okay, do 2 tefachim or 3 tefachim. 4 tefachim is always the shiur chashem of dalet tefachim, as we'll see that word comes up a lot. So therefore, once it's not going to be a tefach, we make it into 4 tefachim. But again, it can't be a tefach because of that you can't use the area beneath the kair. That's option number 1. Says the Gemara, and again, these are the 4 different options. 1, 2, 3, 4. The Gemara is going to say. Says the Gemara, no, not necessarily. I can tell you that everyone actually holds mutlish tamas kair. You could actually use the area beneath the crossbeam. So what's the machlekes? Welcome Efegi. It's a different principle. Mar Sava, Rabbi Yisrael holds that you only need a tefach. He holds that kaira, the crossbeam that the Chum instituted for the Mavai, mishum heker. That's like we're saying. That's just as a sign that you shouldn't come for those in Rosh Hashanah to carry in Rosh Hashanah. Now, here when they're coming into the Mavai, there's a sign that when you utilize in the area beneath the kaira, because again, everyone holds, according to this interpretation, you use the area beneath the kaira. So there's a sign. As you're coming in, you have to step onto the platform, you realize, oh, wait a second, whoa, I see this is a crossbeam over here. Oh, okay, here's a mavli. So that's different than what I was in just till now Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, a tefach is enough. But Amar Sababai holds that no, the kaira that permits by a mavli, the reason is mishum mechitza, because of a halachic wall, which is, we say that the outermost part of that crossbeam comes down and closes off the area in the mavli. Because again, it's closed on 3 sides. It's open on the 4th side. So we view the kaira, the crossbeam, as if it's a virtual wall coming down. And the Rabbanan say that more than 20 amas, we don't say that it comes down and closes off. Now, since the miut, this thing that's diminishing the meaning, again, it could only be a mechitza, only if it's within 20 amas. So if it's not going to be dalat tfachim, then it's going to be a wall for an area less than dalat tfachim. Why? Because it's not a wall for the mavoi, because the mavoi is higher than 20 amas. The Abaye says I can't say like Rabbi Yosef, because it's only a wall if it's within 20 amas. Like we see, kaira it can't be higher than 20 amas. So the halacha that says that mechitza could only be, and we'll see this in this Masechta too, could only be for Rishus HaYachid, for an area that's at least 4 tefachim. So even though, let's say, it's surrounded by walls of 10 tefachim, it's not going to help. You have to have an area of dalat tefachim. So therefore says Abaye, you got to have 4 tefachim of the platform, because at least it'll be a wall for an area of 4 tefachim. If you have only 1 tefach, it's not a wall for an area. You can't view it as a wall, because a wall is only for something that has an area of 4 tefachim, and it's not a wall for the mavli itself. So therefore, that's what Abaye says it has to be 4 tefachim, because it's functioning as a mechitza. Rabbi says it's functioning as a hecker. So you're coming over here. As you're coming in, you step onto the platform and say, oh, okay, there's a kair, this is a different area than that. And therefore you're not going to be confused that you think you're carrying your shusarabim as you're carrying the mother.
If it would be a real wall, it wouldn't be a problem.
It would be a real wall.
No, it's less than 1 in 20 hours.
No, even a real wall. If it's a real wall, then it's going to be a real wall. But let's say a real wall, if let's say a small little space of 2 tefachim and you surround it around with walls, we don't consider it as halachic as mechitzas. A mechitza is only considered an area like a Rishus HaYachid. Rishus HaYachid is only b'dal tefachim. We only consider it as a separate area if it's surrounding an area of 4 tefachim. So here,
so if it would be a real wall,
no, if it was a real wall, then it would be surrounded because the mavoi has an area of more than 4 tefachim. If this was all sealed off,
no, but even
we made contracting, we sealed off the thing.
20
so then
would be irrelevant then.
Exactly. So that's the second version. Again, the first one, if you're allowed to use the air between the car and not. The second one is saying no. He holds it's a tefach because it just has to be a hecker, which it is, and he holds that has the function of mechitza, which Rashi says mechitza she'en rula dal. Love mechitza is not going to be a mechitza. Or if you want, you could say a third approach. The kulam actually everyone holds kar mishum hecker. Everyone agrees, even the Abaye, that the car is functioning as a sign. But over here, the machlekes is beheker shel matu, beheker shel malkum. The machlekes is regarding the lower sign and the lower sign. What does that mean? As the Gemara explains, the Master Rabbi Yisrael holds that meaning we say heker shel matu. The lower hecker, meaning the elevated area that's what we're calling the mir, to diminish the space, is heker shel mal. Could be just like the sign of what's above, which is that just like this is a tefach, and this could also be a tefach. Which it's not clear what exactly that really means to say. First, we'll discuss it. But a master Abaye holds mean heker shel mata, heker shel mal. No, we don't say that the lower hecker is like the upper hecker. And you need to have 4 tefachim to be as a significant sign, because just stepping on one tefach, you might not necessarily see it. And then we're calling that the heker shel mata. But it basically means to say, are you concerned that it's enough with this? Yeah, everyone agrees as heker, but just one tefach width. I mean, if that's all I'm going to be able to see what's on top, because that's within 20 amas, that's a machlekes if that's going to be enough or not. And the fourth interpretation, you can say the kulam. I mean, everyone agrees yes. Heker shel mata, heker shel mala. Really, the truth is like the way Rabbi Yisrael is saying that the lower heker. Again, it's not really this is the heker, but this is enough to be the same as this. But v'hachas, what's the machlekes, and why does Abai require 4 tvachim? B'gzeira shema, a decree that maybe by people stepping on this platform all the time, yifchas, it's going to diminish this miut, this that is diminishing the height of 20 amas, and then it's going to be less than a tafach, and therefore you need to have it to be more. So therefore that, because even if you're rubbing out, at least it'll be at least an area of 4 tvachim that you won't rub out the whole thing. And again, once you're not using it the same dimensions of the upper heker, meaning that of a tefach, so then we put on a significant amount, which is going to be 4 tefachim. That's what Kamilchik, that's what disagreeing about. So again, there's essentially 4 different interpretations we have to machlekes Abai and Rabbi Yisrael. If you need to have this, again, it has to be within 20 amas. The floor of the mavoi is more than 20 amas from where the kaira is. So what do? Rabbi says you make a tefach platform. Abai says, and again they're all saying whatever the height is, but how much into the mavoi? Rabbi says a tefach into the mavoi. Abai says 4 tefach into the mavoi. Why? Either because Rabbi Yisrael holds you're allowed to use the ear beneath the kaira. So okay, when you're there, so you're part of the mavoi, you're going to see it. Abai says no, you're not allowed to use it. So you're not going to be able to use it. So the people in the mavoi are not seeing it. So therefore, it's not enough tefach. It's got to go into the mavoi, which has got to be the platform, so that you'll be above 20 amas and you won't be under the kaira. Or Rabbi Yisrael holds it's because of a heker. So everyone agrees you're allowed to use the ear beneath the kaira. So okay, if you're allowed to use it, so you'll be able to see it. But Abai says no. Word says mechitza. Mechitza has to have an area for tvachim, or else it's not a functional mechitza. Third interpretation was everyone agrees it's like a heker. Question is, is the lower heker enough to be like the upper heker? Is that enough just that one tefach when you're there to be able to see it? Or Abai says no, you have to have a little bit more so that people see it. Or the fourth one is the Gezer Shem Yichos Kimeplagi. Rabbi says we're not concerned that the ground will erode, so therefore it's enough to be right beneath it. And Abai says no, we're concerned it's going to erode, so you got to have at least a little bit more distance, so that if it's eroding, at least one place will have within 20 amas from the kair. We continue with a similar type of a discussion. Up until now we're discussing if it's too high, and then you come to lower it by elevating a platform. Now it's like almost the opposite. What's the halacha? Let's say the crossbeam was lower than 10 tefachim. So that's it's not the minimum, meaning it has to be at least 10 tefachim. It can't be higher than 20 amas, but it can be less than 10 tefachim. So what the person does is so now you're digging down so that you could complete it to be 10 tefachim. So how much do you have to dig down? So the Gemara says the same type of response. How much do you dig down? However much you need to dig down, it's going to be 10 tefachim. Rather, what we're saying is the mashchay, the length of this excavation into the length of the mavoi, bekama, how much? Which Rashi explains that when you have something that's sticking out, like a platform, then we use the words miyut, like we said in the previous Gemara, so that you could say roichiv. But when you talk about something that is that you're digging out and you're making walls, like chakak, so that's the wording of mashach. But it means the same thing. How much into the length of the mavoi do you have to do it? So here we have a machlekes like this. Rav Yisrael Amar, Rav Yisrael, who before in the previous platform he said all you need is a tefach. Here he says you need to have bedali, you need to have 4 tefachim. And the reason for that is because Rashi explains that over there, in this case, you had walls. You wanted to just diminish the kaira just as a heker so that you could see it. So that's sufficient with a tefach. But over here, in this case that we're discussing over here, you really are making walls, which is, because a wall is 10 tefachim. You didn't have a wall up until now. So both according to Rabbi Yisrael and according to Abaye, you need to have that wall should be like for the shiur of what's considered a hechsher mavoi. Because we're essentially making a mavoi. Now we never had a mavoi till now, because you never had an area of 10 tefachim. So therefore, according to Rabbi Yisrael, the shiur of the length of a mavoi is going to be 4 tefachim. So that's why he says you have to carve out, you have to excavate 4 tefachim. Because that, according to him, is the length of the mavoi. You never really had a mavoi till now because the walls were too low. So you never had a mavoi. The mechitza is only when it's a height of 10 tefachim. So only now you're getting a height of 10 tefachim. So it's not enough just to make a tefach. You have to actually, you're making a mavoi now in halacha. So he holds this shiur of a mavoi is going to be the minimum size of a mavoi is 4 tefachim. But Abaye says ba'arba amas. Abaye holds that it's got to excavate into the mavoi an area of 4 amas because he holds that the length of a mavoi is 4 amas. That's their machlekes. So says the Gemara, Lema, but the Rabami Ravasi Kamifaka. Let's say that they're disagreeing in the halacha of Rabami Ravasi. Why? Because we're learning the following halacha. Mavoi shenifretz mitzidai. Again, this is where you need like the pictures, you know. A mavoi that was breached on the side, on one of the sides of the walls, which is along the length of the wall. And it was klapi roshei. It was towards the front of the mavoi, near where the crossbeam is, a little bit within. So Itmar Mishmei de Rabbi Barasi, we learned in the name of Rabbi Barasi, that in Yesham Pas Dalid, if there is over there a board of 4 tvachim, let's say it was a remnant of the wall left over, or you even made a board, it's actually Machlekes Rashi and Taisus, but you made a board here where the breach is, and some Gemaras actually have this picture, right near the crossbeam, you have a board here of 4 tvachim. So then says Rabbi Barasi like this, so Mata Bepirtza, it's going to permit with the breach, meaning even though that you have over there this breach over here, it's going to be permitted ad esse. If the breach is only up until 10 amos. Why is that? Because since you have, and this is going to be the important point over here, which with the machlekes Abaye and Rav Yosef, since in the length of the mavi over here, you still have from where the crossbeam is until the breach an area of 4 tefachim. So this is still going to be considered a Pesach, an opening, and retains its status, and the Torah is going to be permitting it. Now, regarding the breach over here, since it's not more than 10 amos, this is also considered quote unquote like a Pesach, an opening. Because a mavi does not become invalidated by having many openings into it. And even if people will stop coming in through here, and they're going to start coming in through over here through the quote unquote breach, because it's shorter for them, because many people end up doing that, or it's just more convenient, they just cut through the grass. Even so, this will not lose the status of an opening and the crossbeam to function as the crossbeam of that opening, because since by this opening you have 4 tefachim of mavi space, so since you have a length of daled tefachim, so it's fit to have a kair over here, because that's the hechsher of a mavi, is to have 4 tefachim. Again, obviously this is going to be the point where we're showing that the machlekes Rav Yosef and Abaye, it seems to be in this halacha of Rabbi Ravasi. Now, but the halacha of Rabbi Ravasi just continues for a second. Vimla, but let's say there's no board over here of 4 tefachim. So then, if the breach, again, there's 2 points over here. There's the pas and there's the breach. We're discussing both of them. If you don't have a pas, a board over here of 4 tefachim, then if the breach is pachis mishleish, if this breach is less than 3 tefachim, so then matter. So then it's going to be an appropriate mavi to use. The reason for that is because since this breach is less than 3 tefachim, it's like we say love it. It's like it's closed off and there's no breach. But if the breach is shleishes, 3 tefachim, then ain't a matter. Then this mavi is not permitted to use. Why? Because since now people are using this area to go through, and they take the shortcut, they go through the breach. So we're concerned maybe they're not going to come through the main entryway anymore, and they're going to go through the breach, and therefore it's not considered as a Pesach anymore, and therefore the kaira is not a kaira of anything anymore. Why isn't it a kaira for a mavoi? Because there's no mavoi. Why is there no mavoi? Because there's no pas dalid. It's let's say this left over here is let's say only 2 tefachim. So where's the shiur of a mavoi? There's no shiur of a mavoi. People are coming in over here. If people would stop coming here, we don't care if they stop coming in, they're coming here because this is a mavoi. Ultimately, it's a Pesach with an area of a mavoi of 4 tefachim, so it functions as a kaira. Problem is, if it's not pas dalid, then there's no mavoi over here. And if they're not coming through here, they're coming through here. Again, if they were coming through here and not through here, so fine. We don't care that this is only 2 tefachim. Everyone's coming here and this is a mavoi. But if it's going to be less than dalid tefachim, it doesn't have a share of the mavoi. Says the Gemara, isn't this halacha contingent on the machlekes Rabbi Yosef and Abaye? Rabbi Yosef holds that the shema mavi is 4 tefachim. Isli the Rabami. He's obviously just like Rabami, who said that the pas is enough to be daled tefachim because that's the shema mavi. Labaya, less like Rabami. Obviously, he does not hold like Rabami because he holds the hechsher mavi is 4 amis. So therefore, he would have to hold also over here that if you don't have a board on the side of 4 amis, then this crossbeam would not fit for this pas, and it wouldn't be considered as a kaira. So isn't this contingent machlekes Abaya and Rabbi Yosef? To which the Gemara says, no, Amalch Abaya would tell you, Hassam, over there, like in the case of Rabbi and Rabasi, that's what's called seif mavi. What does it mean it's seif mavi? Meaning this already at one point was a functional mavi. But then what happened? There was an invalidation, a breach happened on the side. So therefore, to retain or to return this machlekes Rashi to make it back to be a mavi, so it's sufficient to be if the board's 4 tefachim. Because it always was a mavoi. So again, to retain, sometimes you just need minimal. So okay, as long as it's 4 tefachim. But says Abaya Hochel, in the case I'm disagreeing with Rabbi Yosef, by the digging out over here. So that's going to be different because that's tchilas mavoi. It's right now that you're going to create a mava, like we said, because it never had halachic of mava yet, because the walls were never a height of 10 tvachim. Oh, so that's another says Abai. Ikar arba amas. There, only if it's a length of 4 amas, then it's going to be considered mava iloi. But if it's not going to have a length of 4 amas, loi, it's not going to be. So again, Abai is essentially saying the Rabbi Mivasi would agree that he would agree to that halacha. Because here it always was a mava. To retain a mava, it's going to be enough if it's an area of 4 tvachim. To make a mava, then you have to have an area of 4 amas. Now Abai comes to bring 2 proofs for his opinion that the meshach of a mavi, the length of a mavi, has to be 4 amas, not like Rabbi Yosef says of 4 tvachim. Abai Ibn Amila says, Raya number 1, how do I know this, that the length of a mavi is 4 amas? He says the time of the Brisa. This is a very important halacha in the laws of the Eruvin. A mavi does not become permitted as a mavi with a side post or a crossbeam, which is a unique heter that we have for a mavi, until it's called a mavi. Now, what makes a mavi? You have to have houses and courtyards open up into the mavi. In other words, you have houses open up into the courtyards, and courtyards open up into the mavi, because that was the way it was in Talmudic times. That houses didn't open up right into the mavi. They open up into courtyards, and the courtyards open up into the mavi. And anytime we mention a chatzir in Shas and the Mishnayos, that was what's in front of the houses, because actually what's behind the houses, just important terminology, that's always called muktzah. Muktzah, not like what we say in the Sefer Shabbos, muktzah. Muktzah is the area behind the house, or it's called rechava, which we'll see that on the following daf. The rechava was behind the house. But now we're talking about a chatzir. Chatzir is in front of the house. The house opens up into the chatzir, and again, houses into chatzirs open up into mavis, mavis open up into Rishus Harab. So that says the Brisa. It's not considered as a mavi unless you have houses opening up into the chatzirs and chatzirs opening up into the mavi. Now, that means to say there's a minimum of 2 chatzirs opening up into the mavi. So let's listen to the cheshbon of Abai is right. It says v'i, and if you think that the length of the mavi is like Rabbi Yosef is bedal is enough to be with 4 tvachim, look at this picture. It might be hard to see it, to understand it, but this is the mavi, and this picture is part two of the raya we're about to bring. But for now, just look at the length of the mavi. If this is the length of the mavi, the way Rabbi Yosef says it, it's only 4 tvachim, because he says all you need is a length of 4 tvachim. Then heichem mishkachas la, where exactly are you having? How are you going to permit with the length of 4 tvachim? Because as Rashi is explaining, he says you have to have chatzeros opening up into the mavi. Chatzeros is 2 chatzeros. Now the thing is, an opening, a pesach, an opening of a chatzar of anything cannot be less than 4 tvachim. How are you going to have an opening in a width of 4 tvachim, right? In other words, forget about this back of the picture. Imagine that back wasn't there, and you're looking at the sides. These are the length of the mavi. Where exactly would you have a chatzar opening up in the side walls? We'll talk about the back wall in a second, but make believe that was closed off. How are you making a pesach if the length of the mavi itself is 4 tvachim? An opening of a chatzar has to be at least 4 tvachim. We are having an opening in an area that in itself is only 4 tvachim. Where's the doorpost going to be? And it's totally breached. You don't have any openings into the mavi. It's totally open because you can't even have any walls over here. Because the length of the mavi is where the opening of the chatzeros are opening up into that. And maybe you're going to say, as this picture seems to already indicate, the pasuk lebedev, and I'm sorry, what do you mean? We'll have an opening in the middle, meaning the back wall. When Rav Yosef was saying, as Rashi explains, that the hechsher of the mavi could even be a length of 4 tvachim, he's talking about a very wide mavi. And you could open up the entryway from the chatzeros from the back wall. That's where the chatzeros will open up. That can't be either. Why not? Because V'amar of Nachman, another important halach in the laws of Eruvin. Naktina, we have a tradition, meaning it's a tradition we have from our fathers, a custom from our teachers, that a zehu mavi should need to belech b'kar. What's considered as a mavi that's permitted with a side post or a cross beam is kol she'orka yeser al rachbai. The length has to be more than the width. That's how a mavi is. It's like an alleyway. It has to be longer the length than the width. Now, ubat mechatzeres pesuchim l'teicha, and you have to have that houses and courtyards open up into it. That's a mavi, and that's permitted with belech b'kar. Now, but if it's squared, let's say, then it's actually considered a chatzir, and it's not going to have the permissibility of a lechem b'kar. As the Gemara says later on, if you base them in Aleph, a chatzir needs a board of 4 tvachim, or a board on one side and another board on the other side, if it's totally breached into Rishus Harab. To have a lechem b'kar is only by mavi, and the mavi is only 2 variables, only if it's longer the length and the width, and it has batim mechatzeres, house and courtyards open up into that. Now, since you're telling me that the length is 4 tvachim, that's going to be kosher as a mavi, that means to say that the width has to be less than 4 tvachim. So then you don't have an opening of a Pesach, opening up into the chatzeres. Because, as we're saying, in this whole Masechta, a Pesach has to be less 4 tvachim. Where exactly are you having the opening of the chatzeres? You can't have it on the side walls because the opening itself would take up the whole side. and it can't be in the back wall because the back wall is obviously even smaller. How are 2 chatzeros opening up? So therefore, that's Abaye's proof that obviously not like Rabbi Yosef, the length cannot be 4 tvachim, or else you wouldn't be able to fit the chatzeros in. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Yosef, he would respond, no, the pasach le bekeren zavas. The opening would be on the corners, which Rashi translates to mean you have a tefach of the opening in the back wall, and you have 3 tvachim of the side walls. And same thing is on the side. So it might be misleading when you look at the doors, and Tosfos actually has a difficulty with these dimensions, but if you look at the picture, here you have like a tefach over here, and you have 3 tvachim over here. So that's 4 tvachim, and you'll put the entryways like this on an angle, so therefore you're going to have 4 tvachim like that, because you have a tefach, 1 tefach in the back wall, and you have 3 tvachim on the side, so you'll have a doorpost, and you'll be able to have the 2 chatzeros open up into the mavi. That's the length of 4 tvachim. So therefore he rejects Abaye's proof. But Abaye says a second proof. He says, how do I know that the length has to be 4 amas and it cannot be 4 tvachim? Says Gemara, says another interesting halacha. You have a side post that's sticking out from the wall of the mavi into the width of the mavi. Meaning, as Rashi explains, it wasn't made, and please discuss at length this concept, it wasn't made to be as a lechi. Rather, just what happened was when they made construction, they had sticking out from the side wall into the area of the mavi, like Rashi says, to support, like a supporting beam. They had this coming out, this board coming out. So it says the Gemara like this. If it's pachas me arba amas, if it's less than 4 amas in the width of the mavi, so then need the mishum lechi. Then it'll be qualified like a lechi, and we can rely on it because although it wasn't really put up to be a lechi, but the halacha is like Abaye is one of the 6 things what we call yal kagam that we rule like Abaye, even though he disagrees with Rava. By a lechi amin me'elav, if it just happens to be a lechi and no one even put it up like that, then it's going to be kosher. And this actually happens very often. We use this a lot. I'm just turning it because I'm seeing Rashi on the base. So then it functions like a lechi. Then it's lechi achalatira, and you don't need to have another lechi to permit it. If it's less than 4 amas, so good, it can function as a lechi even if it just happens to be there. But let's say dalat amas. Let's say it is 4 amas, meaning it sticks into the width of the mavi 4 amas. Oh, so then it has a different halacha. Nidin mishum mavi. Then we're going to qualify it as a mavi. In other words, since the length, and this is the point that Abaye is coming to prove, since the length that validates a mavi is permitted with a distance of 4 amas, so if this is 4 amas, this cannot function as a lechi. This is not a lechi. This is a mavi. So, as Rashi points out, although yes, if you really made this as a lechi, it would be kosher because adding on to the closing off of the area wouldn't make it less than a minute lechi. But since here it wasn't really put up to be a lechi, so right now, if you would think you wanted to function as a lechi, you wouldn't be able to because ultimately, right now, it really is functioning like a mavi because it has the distance, the area, the length of what a mavi is, which that's going to be Abaye's proof that you see that's why it's not going to be as a lechi anymore because it's already functioning as a mavi. So therefore, actually, mitzvah lechi achalatira, you would actually have to have another lechi to permit this mavi, which we'll explain shortly. Where do you actually put that other lechi? But one thing we see says Abaye from the fact that we're saying that if it's less than 4 amas, it's not a mavi, to exclude it from being as a lechi. Obviously, that the hechsher of the length of a mavi is with 4 amas, the way Abaye says. Which Rabbi Yosef, he would respond. He says, no. La'afuki mitaris lechi, to exclude it from being functioning as a lechi, which that's a halacha in lechi. That's adikar abba amas. That's up until it's a length of 4 amas, it will function as a lechi, but when it's going to be 4 amas, it's not going to be as a lechi anymore. But when I have a mavi, but to become a mavi, it doesn't need to have 4 amas. That's a filah ba'arba tvachim. Now I have a mavi, even if it's 4 tvachim, it would also be a mavi. In other words, yes, it's already 4 amas. It's not a lechi anymore. But not that you need 4 amas to be a mavi. It's just that that's already so much as a mavi that's going to exclude. But it's really a din in lechi shabai. In the lechi, if it's going to be that big, it's not going to be a lechi. And therefore, the size of a lechi and the size of a mavi are not related. Could be to become a mavi, you only need to have an area of 4 tefachim. Now, once we introduced this teaching because there was a proof to Abaye, at least he tried bringing from there. So now the Gemara discussing that teaching. Gufa says the Gemara, Amram b'cham amrafuna. We elaborate on this halacha. If there's a side post that sticks out from the wall of the mavi as you continue coming bays, says pachas ma'arba. It's like we said this. We're just saying it over because we're coming to discuss it. If this wall that's this lechi that was just made because of construction purposes, but if it's less than 4 amas, okay, so the need of mishal lechi, we will evaluate it. It will qualify it as a lechi, as a side post, and we'll permit the mavi. And you wouldn't need it to have another lechi to permit the mavli. But if it's dalet amis, already the length of 4 amis, you need the mavli. Then you don't see it as a lechi. Again, if it was made as a lechi, you would, but if it's just by itself, you wouldn't view it as a lechi, you would view it as like a mavli. But it's lechi achalatir, and you need to have another lechi to permit. Fine, that was the halacha that we said. The Abai thought to bring a rai from it. It wasn't a rai. But that is the Gemara. I say lechi, this new lechi. Heichen mamida, where do you put it? As the Gemara explains the question, the obvious question. If you're going to put it with the wall itself, which we thought would work as a kar, but it's as a lechi, but it's not because it's too big. It's dalet amas. If you're going to put it along the width of the mavli, so you're just adding onto the wall, just making it even bigger, making a bigger problem. How's that going to help? It's already a problem because it's 4 amas. You're just going to be adding 4 amas and another tefach. Where is it going to function as a lechi? So the Gemara brings 2 approaches. Amar Papa, he says, you see right, you put on the other side, by the other wall, opposite it, and then you'll see it as a lechi. Or he says, no, he says, no, you can even have it right there, extending to the wall itself. But the mitzvah bay or the mitzvah bay, which is 2 interpretations of Rashi. Either you'll make it a little bit higher, or a little bit lower, or a little bit thicker, or a little bit thinner. So that you should see that it's different than the wall itself. If you make it thicker, so you say, oh, there's obviously something else. Thinner, you also see that this is a little thing. Higher, or like we're showing over here, lower. Either one of those, you'll see that it's different than the extended wall, and therefore it will function as a lechi. Now,
make it a different color.
A different color in these pictures, right? Yeah, it doesn't seem that for the colorblind people that would work for them. So, and now the Gemara qualifies this teaching that we're showing over here. He says, we didn't say this, that you have to add on another lechi when the wall is going to be 4 ames, meaning this extended lechi, which is not functioning as a lechi anymore. This is only by a mavoi, which has a width of 8 ames, and for sure if it's more than that. Shiva, but says Yeshua. But if it's a mavoi that's 7 ames, then niter. The mavoi is going to be permitted even if you don't make another lechi, and even if this is not a lechi. Because this is 4 amas, we don't view that as a lechi. You don't have to make another lechi. Why is it going to be permitted? For a different reason. Because you have the closed area more than the breached area. Because since it's closing up the Pesach, which is more than the breach, so that already permits the area, as the Gemara says, it's a kabel from the halachas of a chatzar. We're talking about a mavoi, and the chatzar is a courtyard, which are these. This is the chatzar. These are the houses. If you wanted to see the picture before, this is how a mavoi is. You have houses opening up into chatzeres, and the chatzeres open up into the mavoi, and then the mavoi opens up into Rosh Hashanah. So it's a kavachim from chatz. Umachatze, if a chatzer which is squared off, let's say you have the width more than the length, she'ein in the teres b'lecha b'kari, then we don't have the leniency of a side post or a cross beam. If let's say the wall of a house was of a chatzer was breached open to Rosh Hashanah, totally open, and you put a lechi just a little bit on the side, that wouldn't permit it. Because by a chatzer you have to have a board that's 4 tefachim, as the Gemara says later on, the pasei chatzer have to be 4 tefachim. So therefore, lechi b'kar is the leniency you only have by mavoi. So if chatzah, which does not have the leniency of lechi b'kar, still niteres by merubel parts, you have the leniency of when more of it is closed up than the breached area. So even if you have many breaches along the 4 walls of the chatzeres, but you have more closed area in these chatzeres than the breached areas, it's permitted without doing anything. So mavoi sheniters, regarding a mavoi that's permitted with the opening of its wall that's near the Rosh Hashanah. The lechi, which just even the small little side post permits a mavoi. And b'kairo or cross beam, saying it is not a kabachemish and need to be merubel parts that should be permitted with if the majority area is closed, then the breached area, even do it without doing anything else like a lechi or b'kairo. So therefore, he says when it's 7 amas, so that's going to be enough. Now, if the mavoi, Rashi just addresses, says, and what's if the mavoi is 8 amas? So although really based on the kabachim that the Gemara is bringing, you should permit it because if it's more than 4, if this is more than 4 tefachim, so then this is like a pas. And you tell me a chatzar is permitted with a pas, so why doesn't it function as a pas? And that says Rashi, no, since it wasn't made to be a lechi, like we had already previously explained, and it wasn't made to be a pas, so once it's not functioning as a lechi, so we're not going to say it's functioning as a pas either, because it's not recognizable. And we say that this is the opening, and it wasn't made to be as a tikkun to permitted, so therefore that we're not going to learn from chatzar. But regarding merubel parts, that we are going to learn out from the laws of chatzar, which the Gemara wants to reject this kabel chaymer. Wait a second, why are you saying that if it's going to be just an opening of 7 amas, and then this is 4, so merubel parts can be permitted from a kabel chaymer from chatzar? Wait a second, malach chatzar, you cannot learn out kabel chaymer from chatzar, because we find by chatzar that it has leniencies, that it would have the leniency of merubel parts that mavi doesn't have. Because it came per tzasa be'eser, a chatzar, a breach of 10 amas does not invalidate it. unless, let's say, it's taking up the whole space of the wall, or it's more than 10 amas, as the Gemara says later on, that any breach that's within 10 amas is going to be permitted. So, timer b'maveh, how are you going to say by maveh? The Rav Huna says later on vav aleph on the next daf. Shepetzasei ba'arba, or the girtz is supposed to be ba'arba, that it's breaches with even 4 tfachim. So, wait a second. So, you were trying to tell me it's a kabachayim that I'm rural parts to work by maveh kabachayim because it has leniencies that a chatzah doesn't have. Yeah, but chatzah has leniencies that a maveh doesn't have, where it could be a breach up until 10 amas and it's considered as an opening, which a maveh, a breach of 4 tvachim already invalidates it. So maybe you cannot learn that from chatzah. How are you going to tell me that when it's 7 amas, I'm rural parts? I'm rural parts. Who said it works by maveh? Maybe it only works by chatzah because chatzah has leniencies that a maveh doesn't have. Says the Gemara, no, Ksavar wouldn't be the issue. He holds that Maveh Nami, Maveh also Pirtzasa Be'asif, that its breach is also allowed to be up until 10 amas, so it's not a leniency that Chatzar has, Oba Maveh, because Maveh also has that. But the Gemara says, wait a second. This whole Kabachim that you're bringing, Laman Karminan, according to whom is Rav Huna Rabbi Yeshua coming to qualify? Who's halacha? It's Rav Huna. Rav Huna is the one who had said this teaching regarding this lechi that's sticking out from the wall of the Maveh, going up till a distance of 4 amas. And Rav Huna Rabbi Yeshua is coming to explain his opinion. Now, Rav Huna himself, as we're going to say on the next daf, on the Vav Medalev, he himself says, and you come to explain his teaching of Alechi HaBoilim Daf Nishal Mavoi, that a breach by a Mavoi is even with 4 tvachim. So back to the question. So then, how can you learn a Kabachim from Chatzar? Chatzar has a leniency that Mavoi doesn't have. So maybe it has a leniency of Emerald parts, and maybe Mavoi would not have that leniency. To which says the Gemara, you're right, but Rav Huna Rabbi Yeshua, time of the nafshe come. He was really saying his own reasoning. What he was saying was like this. He was saying, when the Mavoi has an opening of 8 amas, so then it's logical, Rav Huna's teaching that yes, when it's going to be opening of 4 amas, it's not going to be a valid maveh. But what he was saying, what I would hold, by a maveh as 7 amas, the opening, then it's not logical like Rav Huna, because it would be permitted based on Kabachim, according to Rav Huna B'Rid B'Shua. They're not the same one. Rav Huna and Rav Huna B'Rid B'Shua. He would say, based on his understanding that a maveh is also permitted with a breach of until 10 amas, there's nothing that a chatzar has a leniency that a maveh doesn't have. So Mavi will have, based on the Kabul Chaim, the heter of Emerubel parts, and therefore it says based on me. You're right, Rav Huna wouldn't hold to that Kabul Chaim, and he wouldn't say it's permitted, because he holds that the breach is only for 4 tvachim. I hold that it's Tanamis, which is the same as Lachas, and therefore you're going to have the Kabul Chaim. Now, however, the Gemara says that Rav Ashi Amar, he says, I feel you could even say B'Mavi Shloimy, that actually he disagrees with the principle we just said, that's only going to be permitted with if it's 7 amas. He holds it would even be by the Mavi that's 8 amas. It's going to not be lechi. You're not going to have another lechi. And he says manafshach. He says either way. And this is the last part of the Gemara. He says, look at this. It says if you're going to say, let's use this picture just because let's say this is 8 amas, and let's say this is 4 amas. So he says either way you look at it. If the closed off area is more, so nitibah and parts. So then you're going to have more closed off than breach, because that means to say that the 4 amas of the lechi is a little bit bigger. So it comes out that the breach is a little bit smaller than 4. So that's going to permit it. And the E part's not official. Let's say the breached area is more, again, because it's 8 amas, exactly. So if the breached area is a little bit more, so need the mishum lechi. So then, okay, that means to say that the breached area is a little bit more than 4 amas. That means to say the lechi is a little bit less than 4 amas. Oh, it's really going to function like a lechi. And comes out that you don't have really 4 complete amas for a lechi, so it's going to be as lechi, as Rashi says, because most people can't be exact. So when you have a mavli of opening 8 amas, it's going to be one of them. Either one's going to be a little bit more than the other. So either way, it's either as a oymen merubal parts, or it's a lechi. Ma'amad, what are you going to say it's forbidden? Because maybe it was exact. The Shabbat Havai Kaldodi, that actually they're exactly each, the breach and the closed area exactly 4 amas. So now you don't have a lechi because 4 amas, and you don't have oymen merubal because it's exactly 4 amas of breach. On that says the Gemara still that Havali Safik. That's, at the end of the day, it's a doubt. And this is lengthy about this whole thing, but maybe it's exact and it's going to be forbidden, and maybe it's not exact and it's permitted. So that's a doubt of divreim, of rabbinic law, because carrying the mabih is only rabbinic. Midaraisa is allowed to carry the mabih. But sabi divreim lahaka, when you have a doubt regarding rabbinic law, so then we're going to go leniently, and therefore he disagrees with the previous interpretation of Rabbi Yeshua. It's not only if it's 7 amas going to be permitted, even if it's 8 amas going to be permitted, because either way, either it's unruba or it's a lechi. Now what, you can say it's exact? That's a suffix, and sabi divreim is going to be lahaka. Something we discussed in today's daf in Eruvin Daf. Hey, we said the case of our Mishnah, essentially, if the kair was higher than 20 amas, so you're coming to diminish it. How much in the width do you have to diminish it into the width of the mother? So we had a machlokes. Rabbi says a tefach. Abai said 4 tefach. The Gemara said the Gemara has 4 different options to explain what the machlokes was. Either the machlokes was, are you allowed to use the area beneath the crossbeam? If you are, so it's enough to be a tefach. If you can't, so then it doesn't help that under the crossbeam it's higher than 20 amos, it's less than 20 amos, because you can't even use the area there anyway, because you the inner part of it closing down. So you got to have a little bit more. Once we're doing that, we're going to make it already a more significant area than a 4 tvachim. Or the machlekes is the curve functioning as a hecker, which is a fundamental principle as a machlekes. Is it just as a sign, as to a notice? So that would be enough as a tefach, or is it as a mechitza? And as Rashi explained, it's a mechitza. So it's closing off an area. Now it's only mechitza if it's within 20 amos. What's the area that's within 20 amos? Only a tefach. You can't have mechitza for an area of a tefach. It has to be an area that's significant of 4 tvachim. The div has to be 4 tvachim. Or we say that everyone agrees, no, it's as a kair. Machlekes is regarding the heker shel mata. Does that have to be heker shel mala? Which means to say essentially that, do we say that it's enough, just literally right beneath the kaira, that heker, which is a tefach, could it be the lower one also? That's machlekes, that's enough to be like a tefach, or do you have to be a little bit more so that people could see it for a greater distance of 4 tvachim? Or was regarding, do we make a gzer? No, everyone agrees that it could be the same heker shel mata, heker shel mala, just to be a tefach. But we're concerned, maybe shemi yifchas, maybe people are stepping on that stool, on that stoop, and they're wearing it down, it's going to be less. So if you make it a 4 tvachim, we're not so concerned that it's going to wear down the whole thing. That's the machlekes. Then we had the inverse. Let's say it's less than 10 tvachim, and now you're coming to dig out into the ground, so it'll be 10 tvachim. How much you have to dig out in the length of the mavoi? Here, everyone agrees there's got to be more. Rabbi Yosef, who previously said that it's a tefach, he says to be 4 tvachim. Abai says 4 tvachim. In the previous case, it says 4 amos. Why? Because essentially you're making a mavoi now. You were no mechitzas till now, because the mechitzas were less than 10 tvachim. Now you're making 10 tvachim in the area of a mavoi. You're making a mavoi. The machlek essentially was, how much is the shiur of a mavoi? Is it 4 tvachim or 4 amos? So the Gemara wanted to say that seemingly the halacha of Rabbi is contingent on this machlek Zabai and Rabbi Yosef, because they said if you have a mavoi that was breached from the side towards the top, so they said that if you have a board of 4 tvachim, which that sounds like Rabbi Yosef, because they're saying it's enough to have a board of 4 tvachim, that's can permit even if you have the breach up until 10 amos. Now, if there's no board of 4 tvachim, so then if the breach is less than 3 tvachim, then it's going to be permitted because that's what the halacha of love is. So that's not going to be a problem. If the breach is already 3 tvachim, it's not going to be permitting because you don't really have an area of a mavoi of even 4 tvachim. But one thing is, this seems to be like Rav Yosef. You're telling me that's enough to be an area of 4 tvachim of the past? That means to say a mavoi is validated just with an area of 4 tvachim. So you could even say like a bayah, because that's what's called what he calls safe mavoi. Which means that like Rashi explained, you're just really making it retain what it already was. It was already a mavoi. There was a breach. They made holes in the wall. So that's enough with 4 tvachim. But here we're coming to make tchilas. We're coming to make a mavoi. We're excavating. We're digging out. To make a mavoi, then you have to have the shiur l'ketchila of 4 amos. It wouldn't be enough with 4 tvachim. It could be Abai agrees to Allah of Rabbi Mevas. Then Abai brought 2 proofs for his opinion. One was from a brayso that says a mavoi is not permitted with a fundamental principle we'll see many times this Masechta, until you have houses and courtyards opening up into the mavoi. So he says like this: if you think like Rabbi Yosef that the length of a mavoi is enough with 4 tvachim, how exactly are you having a Pesach of Chatzeris opening up in walls of 4 tvachim? The Pesach has to be 4 tvachim. How can it open up? And if you're going to say, oh, they'll be in the back wall, okay, you're right. Let's make it very wide. People in construction know somebody's got to figure out things. So fine, the length of the wall you can, but they're in the back wall. The problem is you can't do that because the mavoi has to have the length to be more than the width. So if the length is 4 tvachim, that means the back wall is even less than 4 tvachim. Where you're opening up, says Abai, obviously the mavoi to be 4 amos. Risa says no. You could do it in the Karen's office in the corner. Let's get 1 tefach from the back wall, 3 tvachim from the side wall, and you'll have it on both sides, and you'll have an opening on the side. That's where you're going to have the 2 chatzeros opening up. There is not a right. Right number 2, Abai says, from a teaching of Rav Huna. Huna said if you have a lechi that's sticking out from the wall of the mavoi, which again you have the mavoi, and then you have a lechi, but it's sticking out a lot into the area of the mavoi. So it depends. If it's less than daled amos, so okay, then we'll view it as a lechi. But if it's already daled amos, this is not a lechi again. And we explained from Rashi, it wasn't put up to be a lechi; it just happened to have been there. Then we're going to qualify it as a mavoi, and then we're going to need another lechi to permit it. Now wait a second. As you're telling, if it's daled amos, it's going to be a mavoi. So obviously you see that the shiur of a mavoi is daled amos. Rav Yosef says no. When you're coming to exclude it from being as a lechi, then you need to have 4 amos to preclude it from being a lechi. But to create a mavoi, no one said you needed daled amos. That would maybe be enough to be daled tvachim. Now regarding this halacha itself, so he rejected the right from Abai, both of them. But regarding this, so he said you have to do another lechi. So then the Gemara explained where exactly you're putting that other lechi. So the Gemara says either you got to put it obviously on the other side. You can't put it here. Imagine you add it over here, just making it even longer. So no, you'll put it either over here, or you can put it on the same side itself, but you'll make it either a little bit more or a little bit less, which is a little higher, a little lower, either a little bit thinner or a little bit thicker. Then Rav Shloimy actually explained this halacha when he says, wait, we didn't say that you're going to have another lechi to be permitted. Only the mavli, the width of the opening of the mavli is 8 amas. Then you're going to need to have, because it's not functioning as a lech anymore, and it's still too wide, so you're going to have another lechi on the other side or a little bit higher or lower on the same side. But if let's say the mavli itself is only 7 amas wide, then it's going to be permitted even without doing another lechi. Why? Because I'm in Merubah parts. You tell me it's too big, it's 4 amas? Guess what? The opening is only 7 amas. That means you have more closed off area than opening. And how do you know Merubah parts works by mavli? Chatzar is not permitted with lechi b'kaira. Mavli is. So if it has that leniency of Merubah, for sure mavli does. Wait a second. So then the Gemara says, yeah, but chatzar is permitted with a pirza of 10 amas. A mavli is only 4 tfachim, so maybe chatzar has leniencies that mavli doesn't have. Another thing says no, Rav Shloimy holds the same thing would be by mavli. And although Rav Shloimy himself, who is coming to qualify his halacha, he holds the mavli is with 4 tfachim, but he was saying Tami de Navshe, he was saying what I hold. I would hold that whatever leniency chatzar has, mavli has, and therefore if the chatzar has leniency of unrolled parts, for sure mavli has that leniency, and therefore if it's going to be 7 amas, it's going to be permitted without another lechi because of unrolled parts. Rav Ashi says no, not even 7 amas. Even if the mavli is a width of 8 amas, you're not going to have another lechi. This is monoshach. If the closed up, again, it's 8 amas, right? So it's not exact, right? If the closed up area, the lechi thing is a little bit more than 4 amas, so then good, you got oimid meruba. If the breach is a little bit more than 4 amas, then good. That means to say that the lechi is less than 4 amas, it's going to be permitted as a lechi. What are you going to say? They're exactly precise, you mitzamtzum, that exactly this is 4 amas, this is 4 amas, so it's not oimid meruba, and neither are you going to have more of, it's not a lechi either, because it might be 4 amas. Okay, it's a suffix drabanan, and suffix drabanan we go lahakal, and therefore it's going to be permitted even says Rav Ashi and Malvin without making another lechi to permit it taking to enter